The tires screech against the pavement as Jordan Hale grips the steering wheel, his knuckles turning white. His wife Naomi writhes in pain beside him, one hand clutching her belly, the other bracing against the dashboard. Her breath comes in short, sharp gasps. "Hold on, baby, we're almost there," Jordan says, his voice tight with worry. Naomi clenches her teeth, sweat glistening on her forehead. I, I don't think we have much time," she gasps. Jordan's heart pounds as he pulls into the emergency room parking lot, throwing the car into park before rushing to her side. He carefully helps her out, her legs nearly giving out beneath her. Inside the ER, the harsh fluorescent lights cast a cold glow over the waiting area. A black receptionist behind the desk sees Naomi's state immediately and doesn't hesitate. She pages a nurse for urgent assistance, her fingers moving fast over the keyboard. If you're invested in this story so far, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Now let's get back to it. A moment later, Nurse Linda Caldwell steps through the doors. Mid-50s, tired eyes, years of experience, but also years of ingrained bias. She takes one look at Naomi, a quick once-over that barely registers her pain, then sighs as if the sight of them alone is an inconvenience. "You'll have to wait. Others are ahead of you," Linda says dismissively, already turning away. Jordan steps forward, desperate. "Please, my wife's in pain. The baby's coming." Linda doesn't even look back. She just waves a hand over her shoulder. Yeah, labor takes hours. Sit tight." Naomi grips Jordan's hand, her nails digging into his skin. He can feel her shaking. He's about to protest again when the automatic doors slide open behind them. A white couple walks in, the woman also visibly pregnant, but calm, even chatting on her phone. No signs of distress, no urgency. Yet the moment Linda sees them, her entire demeanor shifts. Her tired expression suddenly softens. Her shoulders straighten. "Oh, honey," she coos, rushing toward them. "Let's get you into a room right away." Jordan watches, his stomach twisting, as Linda gently guides the other woman past them, past Naomi, who is now struggling just to keep herself upright. His wife squeezes his hand, her voice barely a whisper. "Jordan, please. Something's wrong." And in that moment he knows, waiting isn't an option. Not tonight. Naomi's breathing grows shallow, her face contorting as another contraction tears through her body. Jordan tightens his grip on her hand, his pulse racing. She's burning up, sweat slicking her forehead. He glances at the clock. Minutes are slipping away and Naomi is only getting worse. "Stay with me, baby," he whispers, brushing damp curls from her face. She barely manages a nod before another wave of pain steals her breath. Jordan pushes to his feet and storms toward the nurse's station. Linda sits there, tapping away at her keyboard, utterly unbothered. He forces himself to keep his voice steady. "She's not okay. Please, can we just see a doctor?" Linda finally looks up, eyes narrowing. "Sir, if you keep harassing me, I'll call security." Jordan blinks in disbelief, heat rising to his face. "Harassing? My wife can barely breathe, and you want to—" A voice cuts in from the side. "Let me check her vitals." Jordan turns to see a younger nurse, Monica Davis, early 30s, black, and clearly concerned. She's already reaching for her stethoscope when Linda steps between them. "Stay out of this," Linda snaps, her tone sharp. "She's fine." Monica hesitates, her eyes flickering toward Naomi, who is visibly trembling in the waiting chair. She looks anything but fine. Jordan stares at Linda, disbelief turning into rage. "You're playing with my wife's life right now." Linda crosses her arms, unmoved. "I said she'll be seen when it's her turn." Jordan's fists clench at his sides. He wants to scream, wants to shake her, make her understand, but deep down he knows she doesn't care. Instead, minutes turn to an hour, and Naomi is slipping. Her body slumps slightly in the chair, her skin growing alarmingly pale. She tries to speak, but only a weak rasp escapes. "Naomi?" Jordan kneels in front of her, gently patting her cheek. Her eyes flutter, unfocused. Panic crashes over him. He snaps his head up, scanning the ER. He's done waiting. "Somebody help!" Jordan's shout thunders through the room, raw, desperate. Heads turn, patients glance up. This time someone listens. A doctor rushes forward. Dr. Patel, mid-40s, his expression instantly shifting to alarm the moment he sees Naomi. "What's going on?" Patel asks, already crouching beside her, fingers pressing against her wrist. His face hardens. "She's in distress," he says quickly, snapping into action. "Get a gurney, now!" Linda opens her mouth to object, but Patel cuts her off with a glare. Jordan sags with relief as nurses scramble to move Naomi, but one thought lingers in his mind. This could have been avoided. If only someone had listened sooner. The doors slam open as Dr. Patel and a team of nurses rush Naomi down the hall, her limp body barely responding to their voices. Jordan tries to follow, but a nurse gently holds him back. "We need to move quickly," she says. "Wait here." Jordan wants to fight, wants to shove past and be by Naomi's side, but his legs refuse to move. He watches helplessly as the gurney disappears behind heavy metal doors. Then silence. The waiting room feels colder now, every second dragging into eternity. Jordan paces, his hands gripping his head, his heart slamming against his ribs. He doesn't remember sitting down, but somehow he's there, elbows on his knees, fingers pressed against his temples. Somewhere in the distance, he hears phones ringing, muffled conversations, the occasional cough, but it's all white noise. All he can think about is Naomi, how she squeezed his hand in the car, how she winced, gasped, begged for relief, how Linda ignored her. Every second they wasted replays in his mind. His foot taps restlessly against the floor. His fingers curl into fists. He keeps checking the clock. 5 minutes, 10, 20. Why is this taking so long? 100 worst-case scenarios race through his mind, but nothing could prepare him for the moment when the doors finally open and Dr. Patel steps out. Jordan jumps to his feet, scanning Patel's face before he even speaks. And then he knows. His chest tightens, his breath catches. The world seems to tilt. Dr. Patel doesn't have to say anything. His eyes say it all. Still, Jordan shakes his head as if denying reality itself. "No." Patel takes a breath, his voice gentle, but heavy. "I'm so sorry." Jordan feels his knees buckle beneath him. The words blur together like a distant echo. Severe preeclampsia. Internal bleeding. If we had caught it earlier. But Jordan doesn't hear them, because Naomi is gone. His Naomi, his best friend, his wife, the mother of his child, is gone, and she didn't have to be. Jordan's fists clench so tightly that his nails dig into his palms. His vision blurs with fury and grief. This wasn't just bad luck. This wasn't just an unfortunate outcome. This was neglect. This was indifference, and this was preventable. And Jordan isn't going to let this go. The days that follow are a blur. Jordan barely eats, barely sleeps. His mother moves in to help with the baby, but even holding his daughter doesn't quiet the storm raging inside him. Naomi should be here. She should be cradling their newborn, laughing, exhausted, but alive. Instead, he's alone. And the hospital? They offer nothing but condolences. But Jordan doesn't want condolences. He wants answers. One morning, a thick envelope arrives in the mail. Naomi's medical records. He hesitates before opening it, bracing himself for what's inside. But nothing could prepare him for what he finds. Clear signs of preeclampsia ignored. Repeated high blood pressure readings never followed up on. Her worsening symptoms dismissed for over an hour. His hands shake as he flips through the pages. This wasn't an accident. It was neglect. He can still hear Linda's voice, cold, dismissive. Yeah, labor takes hours. Sit tight." His stomach churns. His grief twists into something else. Rage. This can't end here. The next morning, Jordan marches into the hospital. He doesn't ask for a meeting. He demands one. The administration caves quickly, setting up a review with senior staff. It's a small, windowless boardroom, but it feels suffocating. Hospital executives sit stiffly in their seats, clutching documents, avoiding eye contact. A few doctors are there too, including Dr. Patel, who looks genuinely uncomfortable. And then there's Linda, sitting at the table, arms crossed, expression smug. Jordan knows that look. It's the same indifference she had the night Naomi died, He plants both hands on the table, knuckles white. Explain this. He slides Naomi's records across the table, the proof of her slow, preventable death. The room is silent for a beat. Then an older administrator clears his throat, carefully choosing his words. Mr. Hale, we take this very seriously. However, we must be thorough before making any accusations against our staff. Nurse Caldwell is one of our most experienced. Linda scoffs before he even finishes. I followed protocol, she says, shrugging. Women come in all the time thinking they're in labor when they're not. I used my judgment. Jordan sees red. He leans in, voice sharp as glass. Your judgment? You mean ignoring my wife while she bled to death? Linda rolls her eyes. Sir, we can't just push people ahead in line because they're loud. There were others before her. No, there weren't. A new voice cuts in. Everyone turns as Dr. Patel speaks up. His expression is grim. There were no urgent cases ahead of Naomi that night. Jordan watches as Linda shifts in her seat for the first time. Patel folds his arms, his voice steady. I reviewed the charts myself. The patients seen before her, mild dehydration, a sprained ankle, a false alarm labor case that you rushed to help while Naomi was literally gasping for air. The air in the room changes. Other staff murmur. Some look down, embarrassed. Others uncomfortable. Linda's jaw tightens. That's not true. Let's check. Another administrator nods to security, and suddenly a screen lights up at the front of the room. Surveillance footage. Jordan's pulse hammers as the video plays. There he is, pleading with Linda. There's Naomi, pale, slumped, clearly in pain. There's Linda, rolling her eyes, dismissing him, refusing to even check Naomi's vitals. And then there's Linda rushing to assist a white couple who walked in moments later. Gasps ripple through the room. A young nurse, Monica, buries her face in her hands. A senior doctor shakes his head, disgusted. Even the administrators, the ones who were hesitant at first, look like they've been punched in the gut. Jordan's voice is low, steady, deadly. You let my wife die. You ignored her. You ignored me. You dismissed the nurse who tried to help. Linda's face is stone cold, but Jordan sees it now. The slight twitch in her jaw, the barely there panic in her eyes. She knows she's done. For the first time, she has nothing to say. And that silence? That's the sound of justice catching up to her. The silence in the boardroom was suffocating. No one spoke. No one moved. The weight of the truth laid bare for all to see had left even the most indifferent administrators shaken. The only sound was the faint hum of the security footage looping back to the beginning. Jordan stood motionless, his fists clenched so tightly that his nails dug into his palms. Finally, one of the senior executives, a man who had spent the entire meeting stiff and unreadable, exhaled sharply and turned to Linda. His voice was firm, unwavering. You're done here. Linda blinked, her lips parting slightly. Excuse me? Effective immediately. You are terminated. Security will escort you out. The room stayed eerily still as the words settled. Jordan expected her to argue, to launch into some indignant defense, but instead she just sat there, stunned, like a woman who had spent years believing she was untouchable and was only now realizing she wasn't. A guard stepped forward, standing beside her chair. Her face turned red as she shot up from her seat. This is absurd, she snapped. You can't just... We can, the executive cut in sharply, and we are. For a moment, Jordan wondered if she'd fight it, if she'd try to hold on to whatever shred of power she thought she had left. But then she grabbed her purse with stiff fingers, lifted her chin, and stormed toward the door. As she passed Jordan, she didn't look at him. Not once. The door slammed behind her, but it wasn't enough. Not even close. Linda losing her job wouldn't bring Naomi back. It wouldn't erase the nights Jordan had spent staring at the ceiling. His daughter's soft breathing the only thing tethering him to reality. It wouldn't change the fact that she had sat there and watched Naomi die, unmoved because she had decided that her life mattered less. So Jordan didn't stop. He filed a lawsuit against the hospital for negligence and wrongful death. He didn't care how long it took or how much it would cost him. He would make sure they were held accountable. And then something happened that he hadn't expected. Other families started coming forward. At first, it was just a couple of quiet messages. An older man reached out, telling him about the time his wife had been in severe pain after surgery, but had been ignored until it was too late. A young mother recounted how her concerns about her son's breathing had been brushed off until he stopped breathing entirely. And then the messages kept coming. Jordan hadn't gone looking for them, but they found him. His case wasn't just his case anymore. Naomi wasn't the first. She wasn't the only one. And when the media got wind of it, the hospital could no longer pretend this was just one tragic incident. Under public pressure, they issued statements, apologies, promises. But Jordan didn't care about their words. He cared about action. And eventually action came. Policies changed. More oversight was put in place. Training programs were launched. Nurses and doctors underwent mandatory anti-bias training. A diversity review board was established to handle patient discrimination complaints. It wouldn't fix everything. It wouldn't bring Naomi back. But it was something. Months passed, and the case dragged on. But one evening, Jordan got a call from his lawyer. The hospital had settled. A large sum. An admission of fault, even if they didn't say the words outright. It wouldn't bring Naomi back, but Jordan would make sure it helped others. And yet, even with that, the weight in his chest never lessened. 1 year later, he found himself standing in front of Naomi's grave, their daughter in his arms. The little girl babbled softly, her tiny fingers gripping the fabric of his shirt. Jordan kissed the top of her head, blinking against the sharp sting in his eyes. "She looks just like you," he whispered, his voice rough. "She even makes that little face you used to make when you were annoyed." A shaky breath. "I miss you, baby. Every single day." The wind blew gently, rustling the leaves above him. He liked to think that if Naomi was here, she'd smile and tell him he was doing okay, that he was raising their daughter the way she would have wanted. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the quiet settle around him. Then he adjusted his daughter in his arms and turned to leave. Because no matter how much he missed Naomi, there was one thing she had left him. One thing Linda's indifference hadn't taken away. A reason to keep going. We appreciate you sticking with us until the end. If this story resonated with you, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next powerful video. Your support means everything, and every like, comment, and share helps spread these important stories.